by way of background, a little more than a year ago, the session and the congregation commissioned a group of people to specifically be our listeners and discerners for this time. After the New Beginnings process, Session hired a new church development coach, and she worked with this group of people, the vision team, throughout the past year. At the end of last summer, we gathered as a congregation, and the vision team presented their findings to us. The vision for this next leg of our journey began to become clear. We encouraged the vision team to move forward and flesh things out, and in February of this year, the vision team presented its final report to the session and to the congregation. Together with Session, we blessed their findings and agreed to move forward with our threefold vision: to nurture disciples of Jesus Christ, to serve our community as a place of crossroads and connections, and to be good stewards of our building and land by pursuing a redevelopment of our property that would provide affordable housing and more to our community. Our congregation is moved by God's love for God's people, for God's community, for God's world, and we were empowered by the Holy Spirit. And what is God calling us to live into today? Discipleship, to be a place of crossroads and connection for all segments of our changing demographic community, is our way of welcoming all. And to use our valuable asset of land to create a new place where the otherwise disenfranchised can live and be an active part of the community they work in. That's our affordable housing initiative and more. That resonates with serving with compassion. And all of this, along with new worship space for a committed faith community, in the very heart of this redeveloped property, proclaims loudly for us that Jesus Christ is Lord. As just a little more background, in February, the congregation supported the idea of engaging the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, APAH, to conduct a feasibility study on the redevelopment of our property. In June, we, along with APAH, took the feasibility study and our hopes for redevelopment to the Administrative Commission on Congregational Property, the ACCP of National Capital Presbyterian. After Session's approval of the pre-development agreement between APC and APAH on July 7th, we provided the ACCP with a package of information about Arlington Presbyterian Church and APAH, asking for their consideration and direction regarding our moving forward with the redevelopment. The ACCP enthusiastically received our package and endorsed our moving forward to the next phase, the pre-development phase. In addition, two important decisions came out of the ACCP review and comments. They determined that the overall redevelopment will require congregational approval and that the project will also require approval by the presbytery. We will hold a congregational meeting sometime in the future to vote to move forward with the redevelopment. After that vote, assuming it is an enthusiastic yes, we will bring the project to presbytery for a vote. In preparation for this, we have invited our partners from APAH and others to share a presentation on the preliminary findings regarding the redevelopment of our property as a result of the feasibility study. We have assembled, along with the folks at APAH, a team of people to lead this effort. The Affordable Housing Team, which consists of me, Judy Robb, Crystal Hathaway, Mary Helen Harris, Sharon Kaur, and recently added to our group, Jessica Pirwani, who will bring her expertise in education and design to this process. In addition, we have hired a project manager representing the church, recently approved by Session, Ms. Jill Norcross, and I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second, and an attorney who will represent our interests, the church's interests, Mark Vianney. Let's take a minute. Jill?
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Jill Norcross, and I currently own my own consulting company, and I've been working in the affordable housing field for about the last 15 years. And most recently, I was the executive director of the Housing Association of Nonprofit Developers, and that's a group that works in DC, Maryland, and Virginia with groups like APAH, nonprofit developers, and we did a lot of training and professional development, and then about a year ago I decided I wanted to start out on my own. and I currently serve as the Executive Director of the Views at Clarendon Corporation, and that's the building that the Church of Clarendon did with affordable housing. They tore down their structure and built a new sanctuary space and affordable housing in Clarendon. So Nina approached me when she knew that Susan and the affordable housing team were looking for somebody to represent them as a project manager, represent the interests of the church. So it's been a great collaboration so far, and I really look forward to working with all of you. And we will get my information put up on the website, but I'm always available if you have questions or want more information. Hopefully looking forward to a great dialogue with you all. Thanks for having us.
Mark, who, by the way, is offering his services to us pro bono.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out. My name is Mark Viani. I'm a partner with the law firm of McGuire Woods. I could run off a list of bullet points that our marketing folks provide us with about McGuire Woods, but the upshot is we're about a 180-year-old Virginia-based law firm. We are actually the largest law firm in Virginia. We're now an international firm. I've been with the firm for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was a land use attorney with a Maryland-based firm. Real estate development is what we do, what I do primarily. And we work on very large mixed-use developments. We work on small projects. These kinds of projects, we would be representing Steve pro bono because they're great things to be involved in. And I've done a lot of work with the faith communities, such as things in Montgomery County, where we've, at one point had leveraged 5,500 members of interfaith community, everything, the entire span of the Abrahamic religions and Eastern religions working together to work with the county on zoning changes that allow those mixed houses of worship to move forward. And also helping congregations that are in transition. As areas change, your circumstances around them change, how do they reform themselves for the new path forward, to reflect and continue to serve their community. So I'm proud to be part of this. I'm also proud to work with the church and church staff, and think highly of your partners you've chosen and your consultant and their consultants as well. So look forward to helping out. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon. I'm so pleased to be here. Again, I'm Nina Janapal, and I'm the CEO of the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing. I wanted to start by introducing the other members of our team that are here. Do you want to come up here?
Hi, my name is Laura London. Glad to meet you. I'm a real estate project manager with APAH. I've been working in the industry doing mixed-use projects, multifamily projects and related for about 15 or so years. I've known Nina for several years, and I've been with APAH just coming up on 1 year. I'm a resident of Arlington, and I'm very pleased to be with you and working with the church on the project. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carmen Romero. We met last time. I'm also an Arlington resident for the last 16 years, and I've been with APAH for 3 years, and prior to that with Clark Construction. So thank you again for letting me talk.
And while it's not a requirement for working at APAH, it happens that all three of us are also active in our own faith communities. I'm a member of St. George's Episcopal Church, and Laura is involved with the Methodist Church, and Carmen the Catholic Church. So we bring our faith as part of our commitment to our community. It's very exciting for all three of us, I think, to be able to work with a church that cares about mission and community, as well as discipleship and Crossroads. So this is a little bit of background. I think Susan went through most of this. You have been through this 2-year process with the spiritual discernment, the vision of discipleship, Crossroads, and affordable housing. And we were approached a little over a year ago to say, could we be part of that mission, part of that opportunity? Again, a little bit on our project team. I wanted to take a minute and introduce you to a couple members that have just joined our team. Chris Gordon is with Kishimoto Gordon Delia. KGD has been doing some work for us over the last year in sketching out possibilities for this site. Paul Erickson and his partner Neil Rosen are with LeMay Erickson, a firm that has a lot of experience with working with churches. I don't know if you both want to come up just for a minute and talk a little bit about your firms.
HD Architecture. We're an Arlington-based firm. I'm a 28-year resident here in Arlington. We've been involved with a lot of the projects up and down the pike. I'm also part of the advisory group looking at the form-based code that involves, it doesn't actually involve this particular site, but most of the sites up and down the pike. We invited Paul Erickson, who is one of the preeminent religious and church architects in the area. And I'll let Paul say a few things.
Good morning, nice to see you. I enjoyed worshiping with you a little while ago and getting a sense of your community. I'm an active Presbyterian, been here in Northern Virginia since 1971. Been active at both the local and the Presbytery level. Like to try to bring that inside understanding of Presbyterianism to the process. We've designed over 100 church projects. You've probably been to many of them throughout the Presbyterian world here in Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. And religious architecture is a passion for us. It's part of our DNA. It's about building a community of faith and using our skills as architects to fulfill God's call.
A little bit about APAH. We are a nonprofit organization, 24 years old. This is our mission: to develop, preserve, own, and advocate for quality, affordable housing in Arlington. And we are the only affordable housing developer working exclusively in Arlington. And to promote opportunity for our residents through partnerships and programs. Who are we? 25-year-old organization. We were actually founded by 4 couples who were looking for their opportunity to serve mission in their community from their home church of Our Lady, Queen of Peace. So that is our roots. We have 1,117 rental homes at 13 properties in Arlington. We provide resident services for adults and children at our properties. We've also been a leader in development on Columbia Pike. I served on the task force that inaugurated the next wave of planning for Columbia Pike, which has a very ambitious affordable housing goal. I'm very proud that the county board approved that last July. We have 2 existing properties on Columbia Pike with a total of 320 units, Buchanan Gardens and Columbia Grove on South Frederick Street. Invite you to visit either of those. And we're very excited that our 3rd Columbia Pike property is going to open this December. We are a partner with Arlington County in creating a new 122-unit Arlington Mill residences. And in many ways, this is an example of the exciting opportunity we could have right here with Arlington Presbyterian Church. Some of you may have noticed this big, beautiful new community center coming up on Columbia Pike. The county did an RFP and asked for proposals on how to create affordable housing and other services on the back of that site. And I should just stop for a second and note that we are very honored to have County Board Member Chris Zimmerman, who's also a Columbia Pike resident here. And Chris will talk a little bit at the end of my presentation, and I assume we'll touch base on sort of what's happening on Columbia Pike and how this fits in. Thank you, Chris, for being here. So we're very excited about this. It has been a great public-private partnership. We work collaboratively with the county. We have a shared parking garage. We have been through all the different issues of doing shared uses on the site. The project has come through with flying colors. We're actually finishing with surplus cash that we are using to reduce the affordability limits on our property. In other words, we're going from, right now we have about, say this off the top of my head, I think we have about 25 of our units that are lower than the normal affordability, and we've added more affordable units at the property. So we've lowered the rent for about 25 of those units with construction savings. So it's a very exciting project for everybody who's been involved with it. And shown the need for affordable housing on Columbia Pike. APAH was very honored to be selected also back in 2003 to work with the Church at Clarendon. They're now called the Church of Clarendon. They were at the time called the First Baptist Church of Clarendon. They were looking for a mission opportunity as well. Had an aging building, too large for their current capacity, wanted to continue their child care center and do something for the community. We were very privileged. We secured all the funding for that project. We got county funding, soft loan financing from Arlington County, low-income housing tax credits, and I'll have to brag a little. We got those in 2008, which was the middle of the economic crisis, but we were able to secure those as they were needed, one of the largest allocations of tax credit ever provided by VHDA. And we secured all the entitlement approvals. It was a little bit of a bumpy ride. You may have heard about some of this. I think that there's some lessons learned there, two very important ones for this sanctuary space and redevelopment space. This is in the form-based code area, so it's a lot more prescriptive about what can be developed, and I think the neighbors are ready to anticipate what the new space would be. That project was basically, it involves some rezoning as well as a site plan, and it was a little more difficult for the neighborhood to understand and accept what was being planned. But I will say that the neighbors today are very happy with it. It's been a great success. So a good success for everybody, muscled through some rough times. It's also a financial success. 185 children, the largest child care center in Arlington County. Attendance at worship has been growing. They have a very youthful congregation, which is wonderful in the Clarendon area, really speaking to the people living in that community. The property was filled literally within 3 months, has a huge waiting list. Jill can tell you more about that property as she stepped in after it was open to help the church with being executive director of the nonprofit that manages it. Let me switch a little bit and step back. For those of you that aren't familiar with affordable housing, committed affordable housing is basically housing that through its financing or ownership is serving low-income people. In Arlington, what that means is a maximum income for a family of 4 of $65,000. But that is not really who we serve. The average income of an APA resident, an APA household, is $38,000. 75% of our residents are working. 25% are involved with some kind of supportive housing. Those are people, seniors, people with disabilities, people coming out of homelessness. We're very proud of our track record with that group, but I think we are also proud of the people we serve that are active in the retail sector, service sector, construction sector, that they can live near where they work. It's a great economic platform to be able to live in this community. As you all know, we have wonderful schools and services, and we're a very generous community. So the people that live in the APA properties are very long-term residents. We have low turnover in our properties, averages under 20%, and frankly, waiting lists at all of our properties. So committed affordable housing is a little different from market affordable housing. Market affordable housing is an apartment complex that may have become affordable, often through age, but it is and has been an important part of serving low-income families in Arlington. Hard to read this chart here, but in 2000, more than half of Arlington's multifamily housing inventory was affordable to low-income people. 46% of that through market affordable units. Only 11% through committed affordable units like APA provides. Jump ahead to 2009, or I think I've even got it here in the text, 2011, we are down to about a third. So we've gone from over half to about a third. We have every year lost about 1,000 market affordable housing units in this county. Dramatic change in who can afford to live here. And these are families, probably some of you have seen them, people that can't no longer live in the community. Some of them have been very big and dramatic, like Arna Valley, Buckingham Village. Some of them have been smaller and a little more inconspicuous. You may know there's a property up the street here called the Infinity or the Serrano. They kind of renovated units, unit by unit, as they turned over. But still, we've seen dramatic rent increases, repositioning of properties, and a real change in our ability to have a full spectrum of people live in our community. This is one reason that this is one of the top goals for Arlington County, is that dramatic change over the last decade. Here's an illustration of that dramatic need. APA opened the waiting list for our Arlington Mill residences the last week of August. We got 3,600 applicants for 122 apartments. 3,600, and most of those people hand-delivered their application. We had lines of taxis, people getting off the bus, because they saw this was an opportunity in Arlington. Many of them already Arlington residents, but in less stable situations. We're still working through that. There'll be a lottery, but it, to me, is quite an illustration of the unmet demand in our community. So we were called on to, it was really a calling, thank you, Susan, to be partners with you in this journey of looking at the feasibility over the last year. Some of the things we heard when we were called was this was a community that wanted to look at being a church of the 21st century. What might be appropriate to serve the future of the faith community here, not necessarily worshiping in the same way, serving in the same way. And the discernment process, again, discipleship, crossroads, and affordable housing, a crossroads for mission and community outreach. And that really spoke to us because we like to think of our properties as a crossroads as well. We have at our properties community residences, have a half dozen homes for people with intellectual disabilities. We have about 15 homes for people coming from doorways with women and families. We have an after-school enrichment program with Greenbrier Learning Center at Buchanan Gardens. We have an APAH program where food is delivered on site to 2 of our properties. So our properties are already crossroads in a way, but the idea of being partners with Arlington Presbyterian Church in pursuing that mission, that vision, was very exciting to us. The second piece, affordable housing, really has an opportunity to drive both the mission and the economics. We have some financing opportunities that we think can help finance redeveloping the entire site, modernizing the church facilities, leveraging the underutilized acreage here. It's about 1.5 acres of land. And so we use this time to identify the financing and development models focusing on minimizing risk and maximizing program. We concluded through this couple months process that a mixed-use project with the church and affordable housing is financially feasible. So here were our basic parameters we came up with through the feasibility study. This site, we think, can host 142 units of affordable housing in a 5-story configuration, probably in a U shape. We'd seek to have a community room and a tot lot as part of that. That's typically the program we look for at APAH properties. It could also host a church and crossroads space for mission and outreach. As a plug number, we use 7,100 square feet, which is a little more than double this space. We think this space might be about 3,000 square feet. That's one of the things we need to work on with Paul Erickson and his team, figure out what is that right number. A nonprofit child care center. There has been child care here with Funshine. The goal would be to continue to have child care. It's a high need in the community. Again, we came up with a placeholder number of 7,500 square feet for that. The form-based code requires retail along the Columbia Pike frontage, but the affordable housing team also said to us that they liked this idea of a cafe, coffee shop kind of vision that could be a part of outreach for the faith community. So that dovetailed well. So we plugged in a number there. Also probably need some discernment of 3,000 to 3,500 square feet. That's much larger than your typical Starbucks. So some kind of space that could have multi-use activities in it. We wanted to not seek additional density beyond form-based code. We wanted to stay within the parameters. We think that's better for the approval process. Some lessons learned. Let's avoid some bumps in the road. And the initial concept was to have 2-story daycare on the northern part of the site, the little leg of the property that's got green space now. So here's a real rough massing study. Again, this is mostly to tell what can fit under form-based code on the site. I think over the next couple months, our goal is to really refine this. But here's the concept. Along the street frontage, that cafe, coffee shop space on Columbia Pike. We talked about maybe the church wanting to be at the corner. Some kind of residential entrance and lobby for the affordable housing, and then the daycare in the back. Here's what it looks like on the first floor. And then if you pop up, the affordable housing would kind of be that U shape I mentioned, with parkland in the middle. Sorry if I'm in the way. And kind of showing the whole thing all together. You know, it would, the church space be a couple of stories on the corner, and then 4.5, 5 stories of affordable housing. That's what fits on the space. There's obviously a lot of work to be done to figure out how that looks, what that looks like. What is the church of the 21st century? And that's the process, you know, to work on internally here. The financing sources we look to are the ones that have been real drivers for affordable housing in Arlington. The low-income housing tax credit, federal program, the most efficient and effective program for affordable housing in this country's history. It finances about $25 million of equity into Arlington County on average every year to create affordable housing. Lower interest debt, we often look to our state housing finance agencies, VHDA, Virginia Housing Development Authority, for low-cost debt, and then look to Arlington County, not just for the entitlements, but also they have this program, the AHIF, the Affordable Housing Investment Fund. We look for soft debt to finance this as well. The discussion we had, this was really shaped by the discussion with the ACCP, the Administrative Committee for Church Properties, part of the National Capital Presbyterian, was that the best structure would be a ground lease. So the church would be the long-term owner of this real estate, but we need to have, would be the permanent owner of this real estate, but we need to have long-term ground lease so we can get these financing tools in place. Here's the vision for the timeline. I think the most important date here is to look up ahead, 2017. If we focus and move ahead, we think it's feasible to have a new facility here in 2017, in 4 years, to celebrate the opening of a new church, new affordable housing, new services at this site. Perhaps the most key in these steps, so we're going back here, we executed this pre-development agreement with the Arlington Presbyterian Church this summer. We're starting our community relations and outreach this end of the summer and this fall. Really, this fall is our time to work together, to put some meat on the bones on those massing studies. What does that church of the 21st century look like? Fill things out now that we have the design team on board, with the goal of really getting all the approvals by January. And if we do that, we feel confident that we can go through the entitlement process in another year. I told you earlier, the most important financing tool for affordable housing is the low-income housing tax credits. They only have one application cycle a year. So if we follow this timeline, we can apply in 2015 and then start construction in late 2015 if we're awarded tax credits. So it's an ambitious schedule, but we think it's doable. I want to turn this over now to Chris Zimmerman to add some comments on how he sees this fitting into Arlington and Columbia Pike planning.
So thank you very much. I appreciate the chance to visit with you today. This is familiar territory for me. As I think you mentioned, I'm a nearby resident. I literally walking distance. Literally, I walked here. So those of you know, it's nearby. It was my voting precinct for a couple of years when Randolph Elementary School was under renovation, and you all provided the alternative site for us to vote for a couple of years. So thank you. Columbia Pike has been my home for well over 3 decades, and I've been very involved in the work from the beginning to try and redefine Columbia Pike from being kind of an auto-oriented strip that people drive through from Fairfax on their way to DC to a place that serves as a main street for our community and really serves the neighborhoods around it. Neighborhoods which, of course, are tremendously diverse in every way you could measure them. The types of housing we have and the types of families and ages and ethnicities and backgrounds and everything and income. This is one of the most diverse places that you find, not just in Arlington, but really in America. In fact, you may know there was a Brookings study about a decade ago or so that talked about 22204, which is the zip code for this area, and called it the world in a zip code, because by some measures it was as diverse as any zip code in the United States. And for many of us who live here, that is a large part of why it's special and why we want to be here and why we like raising our children here. So on the one hand, I, as an elected official and as a neighbor, have been interested in seeing the Pike evolve in a way that was more useful to those of us who live here, to being a place where we could get the things we need without necessarily driving out of the county, where we could go to things here and not have to get in and out of our car 5 times when there are things on the Pike, a place that would foster a walkable, environmentally sustainable style of life. At the same time, we also want to try and preserve this great diversity that we have. And a lot of the things that are involved in transformation of making places, better places, making them more valuable, that's a good thing, but it raises land values, which is good for almost everybody. If you're a homeowner, it's a good thing. If you're running a business, it's a good thing, you need customers. And if you need work, it's more jobs, that's a good thing. And if you're the county, it's more tax revenue, that's a good thing. The only problem is if you're a tenant making low income, in a society that has, frankly, a very skewed income distribution, then that can be a real problem. And so the process that we've seen all around the Washington Metropolitan region, but especially here in Arlington, especially in those parts of Arlington that have done the best in terms of developing, with, along these lines, with transit and more walkability, namely the metro corridors, have become the ones that are the hardest to afford to live in. So we're thinking ahead of that. So when we began the Columbia Pike Initiative more than a decade ago, actually 15 years ago, and then intensively over about the last 11 or 12 years, one of the things we wanted to be sure was that we get what we want in terms of the kind of Main Street development we're looking for, but that we also don't destroy what we have. We find ways to preserve a community that can have the same kind of diversity in the future that it enjoys today, only in a place that's more livable for everybody. So, without going into great detail, we began by focusing on the commercial areas in particular. And so we planned some of these commercial nodes, like the big activity center over here, over which you're sort of the edge of, and the intersection of George Mason and the 4 Mile Run area and the area of the edge. And really on commercial properties for the most part. We deliberately left out the heavy residential areas with all the apartments that we have. Garden apartments and high-rises that are basically the source of all that affordable housing that Ian was referring to. And we held off on those because we didn't want to encourage redevelopment ahead of a plan to do something about the housing. And to make a long story short, what this form-based code is referred to went into effect in 2002, basically in the non-residential areas. And we've spent a lot of time since then planning out the street space and other things. And working over the last, it's like 4 or 5 years now, I guess, on the housing question and on the other areas. And we came up with a plan that, as Nina mentioned, was approved a year ago, July, that will apply some of the same principles to basically the rest of the Pike, to those residential areas, some of the same opportunities for redevelopment in terms of creating the kind of buildings, the kind of build space we want, but which incorporates specific goals for affordable housing. As part of the process, we actually inventoried. We went out there and inventoried all the housing stock there is, figured out what do we got out there and who's being supported by it, and what are the income ranges that we have, and what are the ages of the different buildings and all these things. Because one of the things we realized, although I've talked about the impact of new development, the fact of the matter is places like this are rising in value even if we did nothing. Everything in today's economy in the United States, the demographic changes, everything's going on is driving people more to areas that are more central than they were before. The move to the suburbs is kind of somewhat reversed. And people are looking for places that are closer in, that are closer to public transportation, that are closer to things they want to be at. And all of that is pushing up values tremendously in places like this. So even before we had any of these new things in place, we saw situations like the one Nina referred to, where an apartment would be renovated and the rents rise and all the people live there before can't live there anymore. So, this is a significant problem. So we documented it. We hired economists to do analysis on, just what the numbers were, the financial realities of what we have to do. And then we tried to work all that into our plan. And it's one of the first times in America, I think, that there's been a plan that so thoroughly integrated economic analysis and economic goals with the design plans. The people who worked on it, said, this is the first time they've done anything quite like this to this degree. And we have very specific and ambitious goals for preserving the housing. In the past, we've always had a goal for providing affordable housing, for saying we're going to save some of the affordable housing that will be lost. That's what we've done in the metro corridors. The goal here is essentially to save all of it. Now, that doesn't mean the specific buildings or units necessarily, but we know how much we got right now. We know that if you're making, say, 50% of area median income, there are X number of housing units that you could conceivably rent on Columbia Pike. And our goal is when we're done with a new Pike, fully transformed, there are going to be no fewer than those number of units. That's the basic idea. And we have some goals all the way up to 80% of area median income. And so to do that, we've put in a number of tools. Some of the tools include, if you take advantage of the new development opportunity we're giving you, property owner, developer, whatever, then you have to contribute to the affordable housing solution. And so there will be, in some new buildings, there will be affordable housing incorporated into it. There are other kind of tools we brought in, and I won't go into all the details, but you heard, we have the APAH, which is our revolving loan fund that we've been using to create affordable housing. Right now in Arlington, that's a little over 6,000 units. It's about 14 or 15% of the rental stock of the county. Again, we're going to apply those tools, as we have in a few cases, including a couple projects with APAH, to try and create more new affordable housing, preserve some of the old ones, and ensure that in the future, this Columbia Pike community will be a better place to live than ever, but it'll still be a place that people can live who don't necessarily make, 120% of area median income and up. That's the general goal, and projects like the one that I know you're considering, pretty well fit into that. Obviously, there's a lot for you to work out, decide what you're going to do, but these are the kind of things we're hoping to encourage, so that the various kinds of partnerships that may emerge, like one with a nonprofit and a faith community, can help add to that piece. Because if you get, we get 122 units down here, we get 100 or whatever units you think you might be able to do here, brick by brick, we build this up, and eventually we'll be able to ensure that